The shape instance operator is probably the most complex shape operator, mainly because it's also the most powerful. It allows you to use pre-modeled shapes for your particles, but it goes further than this. It can also work with hierarchies of objects and also with groups. It can even break down an object based on its underlying elements. In our example scene, you can see that I've prepared examples of each, so we can see how each reacts to the options provided. Let's run through those options now. The first option, which you can see is a pick button, is the particle geometry object button. And this button allows you to choose the node upon which the shapes instance will derive its shapes. You'll note that the pick node does not have to be a geometry object. This is because shape instance works with hierarchies and groups. How your selection is converted into a shape is determined by the following options in combination with the kind of objects that you selected. Let's have a look at those options and then see how they affect each of our examples. Now, I'll quickly run through the examples that I've actually prepared here, and each of these show how the actual shape instance operator will work with it. I've got a simple teapot here, which is not animated. There's nothing special going on whatsoever. I've got a hierarchy of objects. The base object is a teapot, the second object is a torus, and the child object of all of them is a pyramid. And you can see that I've actually got animation on the torus and the pyramid object. So you can see that as I animate the timeline, that actually animates. I've got a group of objects here. So if I put it in wireframe, you can see if I go up to group, open the group, I can select each of the objects. Now, normally I wouldn't use groups if my life depended upon it, because they're very hard to use, and the way they actually work with objects is a bit misleading, and they can lead to lots of problems later on in a project. But with particles, if you use them as a method for grouping together lots of objects and using them with a shape facing operator, then I think they're actually okay to be used. So it's one of the few instances in Max where I can think that using groups is actually acceptable. So I'll just close that group up again. None of those objects are actually animated, they're all static. And you can see the last object I've got is the ogre, which you may recognize from Paul Neal's series of DVDs on rigging. Now, what I've actually done is I've used the animation from this ogre from the third DVD in the intermediate series. And what I've actually done is I've cached the animation on that ogre using a point cache operator. Now, if you want to recreate what I'm actually doing here in this example scene, you'll have to recreate the relationship between this ogre and its point cache. If I go down to the point cache itself, you can see that there's a button here to actually set up what cache it's using. The cache is actually supplied on the DVD, but obviously the path that I'm using to actually get to my point cache is going to be different to the path that you're using. So very simply, if you want to have a look at this file and see the ogre animated, I would suggest that you copy the point cache to, say, the root of your C drive, click on set cache here, navigate to that file, select it, OK it, and your ogre will animate as mine does here. The reason why I use point cache was that it allows me to actually get rid of all the hierarchy of the ogre and just leave me with a mesh. But at the same time, I can actually keep the animation of the mesh. Obviously, the point cache caches the vertices of the ogre mesh. So at the end of it, I've effectively baked out the animation on that mesh, and you can see he's doing the test animation that Paul did for, as I said, for DVD 3. Okay, so let's have a look at how each of these work. We'll start off with the simplest object, which is just a teapot. You can see I've got the pick button, I've picked it, and I've got my birthing of particles happening from frame 1 to frame 50, and I've only got a total of 9. Because the thing with shape instances is that they can actually get very heavy very quickly, and there's no real way around that. Very often people will make them